Well, hello, everybody. I've got my good friend Andre Shirdan here with us, and we are very excited to go and do this wonderful webinar. I just got a text from Andre. I'm super excited about what he has to say. Oh, here's a whole list of wonderful things that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to start in about 5 minutes. We're waiting for some people to go ahead and still join us. And while we're doing that, this is going to be a fast-paced webinar. That is for sure. And what do I mean by that is most of you have already opened, and I think that you have already found some of the challenges that we can work through. And I see that Courtney Adams joined us. Hi, Courtney. And so
Hello,
this is being
everyone.
recorded. Hi. So this is being recorded, and Courtney will send this out to you guys. As usual, we have a little control panel. And in this control panel, there are questions or chats. We're going to be monitoring both. So if any of you already have a question that you had in mind, or multiple questions that you would like Andre or I or both of us and Courtney as well to give you our feelings on that, we'll be more than happy to do that. So before I run away with my beep, 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 I'd like to welcome Andre.
Hey, buddy. How are you? How's it going there?
It's been going great. Andre, it's been a whole minute and a half since I spoke to you last.
I know. The picture that we posted for this group for this webinar was my wish that we could get back out there and play. Right?
You know, I think that we're there.
Yeah,
I think that we're there. More and more people are getting out there. I'm friends just like you are with a lot of speakers and KOLs and a lot of people that are just advising consultants and coaches. And I'm seeing movement out there for sure.
Yeah.
So right now it is 12:58 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're scheduled for 1 o'clock Standard or 12 o'clock Central, or you know what it is,
the rest of the country,
in the Pacific, in mountain and everything else. Andre, trivia question for you real quick.
Go for it.
How many time zones are there in Russia?
In Russia? Gosh. 6?
11.
2? Oh, 11. Okay, I knew it had to be a higher number.
11 times. So that's why we're not doing any webinars there at all, because there will be people that are not happy because of their time zone. So we are recording this webinar, but we do encourage you to go ahead and ask your questions, and we'll try our best to go ahead and cover this. Typically, we run for about 30 minutes on webinars like this, but I believe Courtney has given us free range to do what we think is right, and we definitely want some input from you. I see a lot of familiar faces here, and that's going to be cool. So Andre, on our list of things that we're going to be talking about are touchless check-in. I like that.
Very important.
Everybody's asking. We're getting so much better at it.
Yeah.
We actually had 5 times more demand than we ever thought we would. You know, we prep for 2 times more just in case. You can handle double the load, but it's been great and things are doing really well. That's number one. We're going to be talking about scheduling and the post-COVID shutdown. We're going to be talking about scheduling to productivity, right? To making sure that we're seeing less patients. How do we make the same amount of money?
Yep.
And that's a tough one because we haven't been open for a while. Myself as an owner, I feel it right over here. It's been really painful for us. We managed to retain all of our team, which was very expensive, but well worth it for us. Mm-hmm. And now we're trying to recoup. and forget about even thinking about profit for this year. How do we at least break even so we can get everybody paid and, you know, get our extra PPE and stuff like that? People are asking us questions about that. And, you know, a lot of our customers have actually made videos explaining what their standard PPE was and how they were treating patients, what their new PPE is, and how much more expensive it is. And they're just asking for some help. And majority of the patients are actually appreciating them going above and beyond. And you and I last night spoke about how the days of being able to just jump into another room real quick are over for now.
Yeah, for now. And that's the most important thing that people should understand about this. You know, I'm old enough to remember going through, you know, the HIV/AIDS situation in dental offices and what we dealt with there. And I think it's going to be the same kind of thing. We're going to slowly rebuild our norms and get back to a situation where this is our normal. You know, PPE like we are doing now is our normal. You know, we wouldn't expect anything different if we were going into surgery. I have a lot of offices that I work with outside the country, and their level of PPE is different than what we have here in the US, especially say in Brazil. It's different. You know, the way that they suit up for just you know, a composite. It's a different situation. Yeah.
You know, I have a friend of mine who works as an officer, police officer, downtown New York. And he's saying is that the same people that used to sell like fake Gucci bags and fake Rolex watches are now selling fake PPE.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, I've seen a lot of that stuff out there. Yeah. You know, and the worst part is some of our offices have fallen prey to some of those things, and they bought those things, and you know, now they're realizing that they've left themselves exposed. But, and again, this is a whole conversation we need to have about, you know, I think about my business life very much like a bear, where, you know, I work for 10 months a year, and then I take off 2 to 3 months a year. And I've always done that because, you know, I live in the Northeast, you live in sunny Florida. So for me to make sure, yeah, jealous much. For me, I have to make sure that I have enough in my bank account for the company so that my employees can make it through the winter. And it's the same thing. So my winter just went from ending in March to ending now in, you know, June. But I think this is a lesson that we have to learn about the cycles of business. And, you know, with this virus, it's going to be a cycle. You know, we may see it roll back.
Well, I refuse to do the new norm thing, but
Yeah,
I'm
well,
not asking anybody to refuse it.
yeah,
Everybody has to do whatever they feel that they are. Of course, protecting our patients is the number one thing. Also, number one is protecting our staff. And since you're on here, I will refer to them as our crew
that's right.
because they're the ones that are, you know, taking the brunt of the exposure and everything else. All right, so today is Wednesday, June 10th, 2020. Andre and I are doing a webinar, and we're going to start with scheduling, not only scheduling, but scheduling to goal. And I know that you're speaking about this all over the world. I know Venezuela is one of the places that you're talking about this stuff. So my question to you is this. We know right now that, hey, we might not have two hygienists like we normally do in our practice. We only have one. B, our doctors can't jump back and forth. And C, we're seeing less patients, but our overhead hasn't gone down.
No, and you know, this is something you know, for years, and I think you've been doing the same thing that I've been doing for years, talking about working smarter and not harder. You know, finding how we can capitalize on a patient while they're in the office. And now we're up against the wall with a crisis where we have to figure out how to make this work. And these are the kind of things that, you know, consultants for years have been talking about, block scheduling, and been talking about scheduling to goal. And now we have a reason to make that leap. And I think this is a great opportunity to reflect, to look at our schedule to see what makes up a typical hygiene hour. I mean, now we're actually including buffer time in between patients. And how that's going to work when we're saying, okay, if we're working 9 to 5, where's our lunch break? And then from 9 until our lunch break, how many patients could we see, allowing for that 15, 20 minutes of buffer between patients? You know, we always thought about it just as breakdown cleanup time, but now there's a buffer time that we've got to add in there. So how do we template for that? How do we schedule for that? How do we put those norms into Eaglesoft so we're not overloaded, but at the same time, we're meeting production goals? And how do we see those production goals?
Let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
$1 million practice.
Yep.
In collections or in production. Let's talk about production. I like production. $1 million producing practice that was typically running with 2 hygienists and a doctor that can do anything, anywhere, anytime, sneak in and do whatever it is, no longer does it. So if they're working 5 days a week, I know that it's tough. Right now, I think that a lot of practices should be going to 5 days a week only because they need extra chair time.
Yep.
And so 5 days a week is a $4,000 a day schedule.
Yep.
So if I have one hygienist, Andre, that is not working 45-minute time blocks anymore, and they're doing an hour, let's say, how many patients can that hygienist take and be able to have some lunch and maybe a little bio break? Because I've been to plenty of offices where you look at a hygienist and they have water in their eyes because they haven't been able to get. I thought they were crying, but no, they go.
Yeah.
How do we schedule their time to get that $1,500 in production?
Well, you know, I've always thought that if we work from hygiene backwards, and I know I'm sort of the anti-consultant when it comes to that. You know, I've seen people talk about block scheduling for the doctor, meat and potatoes, rocks and pebbles. Everybody has talked about that for the last 30 years I've been in dentistry. And I've always thought, how come we don't schedule hygiene that backs into the doctor time? And now we're forced to do it because now the doctor really can't get up from the chair as often as they did before. There can't be, I'm going to get up and walk in whenever I can. There has to be a rhythm that happens in the office where, you know, the doctor's coming out at one specific times to be able to do the hygiene check, but also not to break the sterile environment. Well, we don't have sterile environments, but the environment that, you know, in dentistry. So one of the things that I've been working on, I can't imagine how many calls I've had since, you know, March 17th. How can I rebuild my schedule so that I set my hygiene up so that I come out at, let's just call it 8:50 to do that hygiene check? How do I set up my restorative day so that it works for that? And we both have CAD/CAM docs that we work with, and we know with CAD/CAM, there, you know, there's a lot more EFTA time, you know, RDA EFTA time, where the doctor is relinquishing the control of that restorative patient to an assistant. So we can build those times in. So what for me is going into Eaglesoft and backfilling the schedule with hygiene, because those are the people who get scheduled first, and making those sort of negative space times for when the doctor needs to come out. I'm gonna open up my schedule to show you kind of what I'm kind of talking about here.
Now we're assuming that all of these schedules have become empty. The biggest nightmare that you can ever have is an empty schedule came true. And
yeah.
So show us, well, Mr. Andre.
Can you see my schedule?
I can.
Okay, good. So one of the things that, you know, I think about when I think about templating a schedule or something like that. Now, I do believe, and you know, this is my always being optimistic point of view. I think that we may lose, and again, this is 80-20 thing. We may lose 20% of our patients, even 40% of our patients, because they're not comfortable coming back into the office yet. All right, but those 40-30% of those patients who've been on the hook waiting are ready to come back in. And then back to what we talked about before, we may have a shortage in providers. So we may have a hygienist who's not able to come in. So we may be down to 40% of the original schedule filling in with 40% of the people who were previously scheduled. So we might be at capacity, but at one hygienist. So the way that I have my schedule set up, and this is the same schedule I've had, for 30 years, and this is a schedule I use in all my offices. If you can sort of visualize this, let's just take one hygienist here, and I'm going to go to my views, and I'm going to go down to a single provider view just to make it easier. So this is a single provider with 2 hygienists, and this hygienist is doing SRP, scaling and route planning, for 90 minutes. Then the next patient's coming in for perio maintenance. Then the next patient's coming in for a checkup, and then the next patient's coming in for a shorter checkup, call it a kid checkup. So this is my pre-COVID type of schedule. The beauty of that is, if I set my schedule up this way, and remember this is pre-COVID, if I set my schedule up this way, in the states where the hygienist does the injection, the doctor does not need to come into the hygiene op at all until this hygiene check at 11:40. That gives 190 minutes of undisturbed dentistry in the restorative op. There's absolutely no reason for the doctor to leave his operatory in this, and this is pre-COVID. So if that is the case, and I schedule this template, the hygienist is churning along, and if the hygienist can do an injection, she's fine. If the doctor has to do an injection, well, then he's got 180 minutes of undisturbed dentistry. So if you pre-block your schedule this way, even if you do it 2 days a week, you can set up so that my hygienist in a day is doing $1,200 to $1,500 in production, and the doctor is pretty much undisturbed to do high-end restorative care only a few times a day. So in this scenario, I've got a doctor check here, a doctor check here, a doctor check there, there, and there. So 4 times in a day that my doctor has to come out of his operatory. And again, this is pre-COVID. Now, we can make this model still work by adding 20 minutes here, maybe getting rid of this short 30-minute appointment. If I add 20 minutes there, 20 minutes there, and we really don't need it right before lunch, but we can add 20 minutes there so the hygienist gets a little, again, bio break and time for the operatory to clear. All right. So I can still see 3 patients in a day. I can still see 3 to 4 patients in an afternoon, probably go to 5:30 for my day, still make as much production and allow for my doctor to be able to leave the operatory once during the morning session, or twice during the morning session, and maybe twice to 3 times in the afternoon session. And if you notice, I have 2 hygienists. They're doing exactly the same things at the same time. So my doctor comes over and does an injection at 8 o'clock, then does another injection at 8:10, goes back to his operatory and has 180 minutes where he doesn't have to do anything until he comes out to do the hygiene check there, hygiene check there. And to me, this is fantastic block scheduling. The key to it is, will we stick to this protocol? Will we get offices to say, okay, we're going to hold to these blocks? Well, you don't have much of a choice now. You really don't. You have to be consistent with the way you're doing it, because in order to do this, you've got to make it work this way. And the guy who taught me to schedule wasn't a dentist. The guy who taught me to schedule was an OBGYN, and he said, the way I schedule is I'm on rounds or I'm not on rounds. I'm doing OB or I'm doing gynecology. I do certain things at certain times so that people know when I'm unavailable. And what I look at is, when is my doctor available? He's available when he doesn't have to do this injection, when he doesn't have to do this hygiene check, and when he doesn't have to do that hygiene check. And I have to work backwards to make a restorative appointment. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that hopefully this will. Do you see that Excel spreadsheet?
Yes.
Perfect. So here's a couple examples of schedules that I've worked on with some offices across the country to do post-COVID. And if you can see these gray areas, those are the areas where we're down, where there's nothing happening. So this doctor's got 50 minutes, and then he's over in hygiene for those 20 minutes doing doing the hygiene checks. And you can see this light gray area is where the operatory is unavailable and being, disinfected. All right. But this is the same exact template that you saw in my Eaglesoft setup. There's a hygiene check, SRP, and a hygiene check. And then this office does a hygiene check, perio maintenance hygiene check. You could take these blocks and stick them pretty much anywhere in your schedule and make it work. But the beauty of this is, I'm getting 50 minutes of restorative. I'm getting 140 minutes of restorative, 170 to 190 minutes of restorative here, 140 to 160 minutes of restorative. And again, I'm allowing for my doctor never to leave the operatory. Now, they may have to go back and forth between two restorative ops, but they're not going to hygiene, which is where the break really happens, especially if you've got a large practice and they've got to travel down the halls. But
Yeah.
this is the kind of stuff where if you are consistent with the way you do things, and again, I'm a recovering front desk person like you are, so we know what it's like to control the schedule.
Well, and that's the whole thing. It's about controlling the schedule, because way too many times we've done things just because we could. Throw an extra patient on, do this, do that, because we've been sold by them. Same patient that hasn't been able to be reached all of a sudden is on the phone, and you're like, I'm going to get that patient in, and so that's a big thing. So give me an idea. You mentioned CAD CAM or, anything like that. If I'm a doctor and I need to do, let's say, $2,800 worth of production during the day and still see, so how am I going to be scheduled? What am I looking for? What kind of work am I looking for? I know that, yes, a doctor can go and in 1 hour place 4 implants, do $6,000 in collections, and then go back and check hygiene the rest of the day and have time to spend. But that's not the norm. The norm is like, we're hoping to do a crown or two. We're hoping to, place an implant and everything else like that. So how would you schedule that doctor according to your schedule? Let's say I want to have a root planing and scaling in the morning. I want to have a root planing and scaling as soon as we get back from lunch. Mm-hmm. That should cover half of my, day of production for the hygienist, and then do another 2 patients and 2 patients during that time in the morning and 2 patients in the afternoon. So I know that they could do it, but how does the doctor do it? I mean, if we schedule them full of composites, we're not able to do that.
Well, one of the things that I've been seeing and talking to a lot of the doctors across the country is a lot of what's coming back into the practice may be somebody who has a temporary crown, but now they're coming back in for the final cementation, but they're also having to do a gingivectomy, because tissue is just expanded beyond what we expected, So whatever you're expecting to do, add a couple of minutes, add a half hour to that, because here's the thing. You're going to find that somebody had a DO when you scheduled it, but now they have a DOL. They have a DO on 18, but they have an MO on 18, or you know what I mean? So we've got to look a little bit more holistically. Sorry to use that term, but we have to look a little more holistic, and we have to look at what can we do while the patient's there? How much can we get done while the patient's there? How much is it? Because again, we're going to be picking and choosing our patients. I'm sure you're seeing this with patient being reactivated. There are patients who want to come back. There's patients who don't want to come back. There are patients who've been putting off care, that root canal is now maybe an extraction and an implant, and we've got to be prepared for that. That implant that extraction that we planned to do the implant for is now going to be a little bit more bone grafting involved. So I think we have to expect that, because we've got 3 months in between when we proposed a service and today, things are going to get more involved. Prepare for that and take advantage of that, so that you don't need to see 10 patients in a day. You need to take care of the 1 patient that you have. Set the expectation that you're going to be spending more time with your patients. You're going to be taking a deeper dive. You're going to look back into the services that were in the chart that maybe somebody has, a service that they've been putting off, that big MODL, BQF, whatever restoration. But there's also a crown in the same quad they're working on, and maybe now's the time to work on that other tooth. So we have to look a little bit more like quad dentistry, more comprehensive care, and start asking some questions that we didn't ask in the past. If you were a patient in my practice, Alex, I would always in the chair say, I haven't seen you in 3 months. Is there anything else that you've thought about in this time that is important to you about your smile.
So, Andre, I'm going to pause you for a second.
Go.
You taught me this, and to ask these type of questions, always be curious, is something that we are big proponents of, and ask these questions. But what I've been doing lately is I'm actually being proactive, and I'm talking to these patients via, our web conferencing, our teledentistry module in advance.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying, because of this, because of what we're going to have happened to us, I want to know up front who's coming in.
Yeah.
I really don't want to even have them in the chair to start asking questions, because chances are, if we build our schedule the way we're supposed to, and even if it's built out 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance, we will not have the time that we've had in the past to be able to either keep them there longer to do something, or bring them back in the near future because we're booked. So I'll give you for instance, Dedicated Dental has been booked out in hygiene with 2 hygienists for 6 months for the longest period of time.
Mm-hmm.
We've kind of have our core base group and everything else. And we've been really super lucky. But now we're down to 1 hygienist. And now that we're down to 1 hygienist, we have no more hygiene spots. And I predicted that. And so instead of putting somebody onto the hygiene schedule saying, hey, you're coming in for a prophy, I would do my first phase in putting anybody onto the schedule that had work that needed to be done with the doctor as well.
Yep.
And so that's how we build our schedule out. And we are working less. We're not running around as fast. We're keeping our production almost as high.
Yep.
And we're able to do that because we're being proactive. So let me take one step back and say, I no longer do things the way that we used to. So I want people to raise their hand and say, I am ready to be contacted for scheduling. Although Revenue Well in July is coming out with a self-schedule module, I may not be using it right away in our practice, only because I want to have an interview, just like you said, that I would normally be having in the chair, like you and I are talking right now through teledentistry. And I would say, dear Mr. Andre, first of all, you're past due.
Not my accounts receivable, right?
We spoke, no, not on the accounts receivable. You just past due. You were due during the COVID time in February. Now I'm trying to put you back. So we're already behind. And you and I spoke about doing the crown. You reached out to me. You said, I want to do the crown. I said, I can't do the crown because it's not an emergency service. Now, do you want to get onto the schedule, and are you willing to do everything that needs to be done during that single visit? Because I'm spending boku bucks on PPE.
Yeah. And that was my biggest conversation that I had about about what we're going to be doing with scheduling going forward, is using teledentistry as a tool to bridge that gap between where patients were in March and where they are now. And I think that, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people about, utilizing this as a tool to connect to patients. This is the equivalent of, you getting the box with your badges from Disney before you even get there. So you start planning, you start working on that, you start looking at the videos of where you want to stay in the park, you start mapping out things. And teledentistry has allowed us that tool to be able to connect to our patients before they even come in. This is not about emergency care. This is about reconnecting with patients.
All right. So I'm going to stop it with the scheduling, because you gave a lot of great information. Block scheduling, it's difficult in the beginning because of the way that we are programmed to want to just pile in as many patients as we can so we can take care of them during the day. We're going to have to be more restrained. We're going to have to be more proactive, and we're going to have to stick to our guns on the way we schedule things. And in the beginning, it's difficult. as you get through it a little bit, it becomes the norm and people understand it. And like you said about the OBGYN, me as a patient, I know on Tuesdays, there's no way to see him because he's delivering babies.
That's it. That's it.
So I need to get in either on Wednesday or Monday, or that's the only time that he's here in my neighborhood. Otherwise, I got to travel 120 miles to see him somewhere else or her. And that's kind of the way it is. So block scheduling is very important. Schedule to go, because we have to be very, very cautious, and we need to be concerned about making sure that the boss lady, and the boss man can make sure that they pay for rent and all of these things. And us, we want to get paid too.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to make sure that everything is coming in, and I don't want to be in a situation that we're not doing what we need to be in order to do the scheduling correctly. So back into the schedule, from my understanding from speaking and with Andre, according to the productivity that you have on the provider side with the doctor, and do it that way. But really try to make sure that you're limiting the low production to 1 or 2 a day. For instance, we'll do a composite, but only if we're doing something else to the patient, or 1 a day, because we still need to be able to have enough time to go through the hygiene checks and still produce out of the doctor's chair.
Yep.
That's number 1. Number 2 is, we are talking about the new, and it's kind of interesting that I now only pick an outdoors restaurant that happens to be in the same parking lot as dental offices. And now I sit and I watch their literally check-in, check-out process, and I'm reading the body languages of the people that are now standing in 95-degree weather, going like, no, this is not what I'm enjoying, but this is what has to happen. So I'll give you a little walkthrough of what we have been doing with Revenue Well and with our team in our office that has tremendously helped us, because we are in South Florida. Right now it's 95 degrees, and I'm just assuming that in Arizona it's 300 degrees, and it has been just generally hot everywhere, and was the best way to do it. So number 1, I put out a video of what they should expect when they come to our office. And everybody should be able to do that, record it, put it on YouTube, and push it out as a campaign through Revenue Well, because people need to understand that things are different.
Yeah.
And as long as they understand what you're going to be going through with them and how they're going to be doing, they are a lot less likely to be upset. So what I've been watching are people that were not told that they're going to have to stand in the backyard, in the parking lot for maybe 20, 25 minutes. And so people are sitting there with their cars on. Then they're worried about, well, I'm sitting in the room with the car on, maybe I should stand outside. Then they're breaking a sweat. They're already not happy. And then somebody's coming out and they're waving the wand and trying to do all this, and they don't know what's going on, and they just don't feel right. So give them what to expect. That's number 1. Number 2, give them your protocol, that we're going to schedule you now. You're going to come in 2 weeks. We're going to ask you these questions, 2 weeks in advance. We're going to ask you these questions the day of. We are going to call you 2 days in advance. So I put them onto the schedule, and I get myself going to where I'm out 2 weeks. Then I say 2 days in advance, I'm not just going to send them an email or a text message to confirm. I'm going to do that as well. But as soon as they press that button, then we're going to have a teledentistry moment, to where I'm going to take a look at you and see, how are you doing? Are you sneezing? Are you coughing? Are you looking pale? And I'm going to have a conversation with you. At that point, I will also send you your treatment plan for the day that I need signed. In that treatment plan, of course, is going to be a description of what services are going to be rendered. And I don't know how I do know, but we're going to see how you recommend it right now. I put in our standard fee, our discounted fee, our portion of the patient and what insurance is going to approximately pay.
Yep.
Then I tell them that 2 days in advance that I need their copay. And if they say, well, hold on a second, you actually expect me to pay at that moment, then I will deal with it right there instead of dealing with it in the parking lot. Because that's how you have really pissed off patients. Yeah. And I've been training my patients to pay in advance for a very long time, but it's very difficult. It's not easy. But if you explain to them the why, they will be more likely to do it. So then I direct them to the WePay. They go ahead and make a payment. And then I tell them that once you get into the parking lot, you'll get a little reminder an hour or two in advance. Once you get to the parking lot, text me. If I do not get back to you within 2 minutes, call me. Don't sit for 25 minutes waiting for me to text. So I explain it to them and they love it. So when I get them 2 days in advance, here's what I'm doing. I am finding out what we're doing and I'm being a great person. I'm going to find out what we're doing. I'm going to find out if they need any pre-medication at that moment. I'm going to find out if they're going to need any type of post-medications. So if they're getting a tooth extracted, I'm ordering their pills right now. Yeah. And I'm telling them, pick them up along the way. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of the stuff that we do, we're actually pre-medicating people, for instance, with the Dolomit, you know, to get away from the pain. And so when the anesthesia runs off, they're not freaking out. Yeah. Standing in Walgreens in line and stuff like that. So step one is we're going to decide what we're going to do. Step two is we're going to get the treatment plan over to them immediately, and Revenue Well just released a way for them to print it and send it to them right away electronically. They then sign it, then they make a payment. Now, I don't need to be walking out the patient in order to put a payment into their account, do I?
No.
Can you show me, Andre, if possible, how do I just, on a patient, just put a credit on their account that they paid for so I could walk them out later on and figure out what to do with the credit or whatever else that we find at the time that we need to do that we're going to be able to charge them in office?
Well, you know, I always, you know, and we've talked about this a million times, you know, and there's somebody who has an unassigned credit. Yeah, I'm always taking account payments in advance of treatment. And here's the thing, if they're just sitting in the car, yeah, if we're collecting way in advance, that's great. But one of the great things with Eaglesoft is I can take a payment now. All right. And if I don't want to process this through, I can just minimize this, hold it until the patient comes back out, and then finalize the walkout if that's something that the office wants to do. But if you want to do it in advance, just take a payment, save it, put it in the account. And one of the things that we want to make sure that every office has the ability to do, and this is something that I think in version 16 or 18, I can't remember exactly, but one of the things that was really important is distribution of credits was not turned on by default. So I've seen a lot of offices who have struggled with unassigned credits because people who are just on the business end of things but don't have admin rights weren't allowed to assign credits. So yeah, we were posting these credits in advance of service, but they weren't able to distribute the credit. So we've got to make sure we turn on that feature so that credits can be distributed by you know, an admin worker who may not be an admin. And sometimes even the admins don't have the ability to distribute credits. But take the payment in advance. It will sit as a unassigned credit. And then when time comes to do the walkout, you'll actually get this little icon there, that little blue icon, whoops, that shows me that there is an unassigned credit. And it went away because I've got something going on here. But I would actually see that blue exclamation point to let me know that there's an unassigned credit that should be applied to this. And again, based on your security profile, will you have the ability to assign that credit? So that's something that you need to contact the PTC and make sure that you have your security profile set up so that the people who are taking payments and processing walkouts have the ability to assign credits.
That is super. So that's something that I do right away. So then once I get my payment, I don't stop. I then schedule them for the future appointment.
Oh yeah.
Because that's something that is important. So I have them sign the consent. I have them sign whatever documents. I have them sign the COVID letter. I have them sign every single thing that you can possibly imagine that we want to do as a protocol. Then we get them back in and get all of that done. But I do pre-schedule them prior to getting anything done. And they're a lot more likely to come in once they have paid you, they signed all the paperwork and everything else. We could be assured that we don't scramble the very last second trying to fill the schedule of putting somebody in our COVID times. Now, down the road, let's get through the winter time and get everything good and see how things are being more progressed. We can change that up. But I think that until the end of the year, that's how we're going to stick to our scheduling and everything else like that. Teledentistry has been actually really awesome for many, many, many different things because we now know if an emergency is legit or not. And so I've been doing the same thing with emergencies. We've been closing at 5 o'clock sharp, but always ready to go till 6 o'clock if we need to bring an emergency in.
Yep.
And people are not complaining about sitting in their cars. They're actually loving it because they feel safe and they're doing their online stuff. They're watching whatever YouTube channels they want to, learning about procedures that are going to be happening so they can help the doctor out. But that's something that is very important. And I think that we're going to be looking at this more productively. So at this point, we are at 137. And what I do not see, and maybe Courtney can help me with this,
the chat box
is the chat box.
Yeah, I was kind of looking
There
at
are
the
currently, there aren't any questions at this time. So either you have both done an excellent job of explaining everything and everyone's on their Eaglesoft and Revenue Well putting together plans, or we just need to give them a few minutes to kind of compose their questions.
Yeah.
So we can do that, and then still offer some pearls and tricks.
Yeah.
Courtney,
and one of the things
I'm sorry.
I was going to say the same thing.
Go ahead. Is there anything that you want us to touch on, Courtney? I know that we have the new treatment plan up to push out. I know that we're super excited that we're launching the new scheduler that people will be able to schedule their own time, like the open table for dentistry, and we'll be doing webinars on that. I know that we have added the phone systems, and I know there are a lot of people that are not able to get back to work right away because we have no ability to leave the kids anywhere. So all of that is kind of where it's at.
A hot topic right now that's recently been coming into the support team, and I've been doing some adjunct webinars on this, is forms. Obviously, forms, very popular product right now, with the ability to reduce patient interaction in the waiting room or be able to get that ADA COVID patient screening on file, just make sure no one has any of those symptoms coming in. So not sure how many of our customers are aware that we do now have a built-in form. If you are a forms customer, we've offered you a built-in ADA patient screening COVID form, and you can copy that single link. You can text it to your patients via Messenger. You can put it into your appointment reminder text message or email. You can put it into your custom campaign that you're sending out saying, hey, we are reopening the office on June 1st, June 15th. Please, new policies and procedures in place. Please fill out this COVID screening form. So yes, the patient screening form and being able to send that single link has been huge lately, along with virtual visits, as you both noted.
Yeah.
All right. Let me go through one of the questions that I have right here, which is a fantastic question. Everybody should be on Revenue Well Rockstars. Revenue Well Rockstars will allow you access to some key Revenue Well people. And if you noticed, I have not been on Revenue Well Rockstars because recently one of the other founders, Max Longin, who's our CTO, has been working with everybody on getting things. And that's the best place to go ahead and give your recommendations on what you're looking for, and we'll see how many people are doing it. So Mark asked the question of if we're looking into doing some kind of an alert when a patient comes into the parking lot and turn them yellow like you would in Eaglesoft that they have arrived. That is a great thing. And Courtney, for the 57th time this hour, is going to submit that because a lot of you are asking for it, and we're going to work through that and try to get you in here.
You know, Alex, on that one of the things I've been talking to offices about is to rethink the color coding. And for me, when I used Eaglesoft in an office, we used the color coding to mean something different. So red, obviously, the person was late. Yellow meant that the person was in the office and filling out paperwork or completing paperwork. And green for us meant that the patient was ready to go back, not that they were in the chair. So I used it different than the actual meaning in the software. But you know, rethink the way we're using it so that, you know, yellow, the person, yeah, that would be great. The patient has arrived and is completing paperwork. And green, they're ready to come back. You're ready to go out to the car to get them back, or whatever your process is in your office. But rethink the color coding a little bit based on where we are in dentistry right now.
Yes. It would, I agree with you tremendously. It would be helpful, but we at RevenueWell also want to make sure that we're helping with that for the virtual check-ins and everything else. So we're going to do it. I see we have an insurance question about the PPE. For me, it's kind of weird. I'm not going to make myself a expert, but here's the way that I do it. We did record a video letting people know that we are using certain type of PPE and that we're charging a certain amount of money for it. Unfortunately, the insurance companies, they don't care. They don't care what you're spending on it. They don't care how you're getting it. They just want to make sure that their providers are paying the least amount that they possibly can. And so it's totally up to the office to do what they can, but do check with your state and do check with your insurance companies because you have an agreement with them and they might have modified your COVID-19 time agreement. So I would check it out. We're not going to give you an answer that is concrete on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion in the Eaglesoft Field Guide on the topic, how to bill for it, what insurance companies are paying for it. Great people in the group like Tom Lamoli, Teresa Duncan, experts who are out there writing the codes and working with the ADA on those codes. So those are the experts. My background is in customer service. It's a different point of reference when it comes to PPA. So.
Yep, and so Laura says that their hygienist turn the arrival indicator green when they're ready for the patients to come back to the office. That's how they use it.
Yep, that's what I do.
Yep. You're 100% correct. Like, switch it up and use it for what you want to use it for, but we will definitely go ahead and submit that as an enhancement to let everybody know of some kind of a jumping icon or something that will allow everybody to know that there is a patient in the parking lot ready to be seen or just pulled up waiting for paperwork or something like that. All right. So at this point, it looks like we're pretty much done with our stuff that we're going to be talking about with Andre, and I hope it was worthwhile for you. It's definitely worthwhile for me to know that we should start scheduling to production and we should start looking at some of our forms. Have definitely gotten much better in what you're able to do, the capabilities, and they're still working on forms every day to make sure that we're giving you much more options. Our office would never be able to work without RevenueWell forms, without RevenueWell teledentistry, without the telephone option to be able to call straight out of RevenueWell and stuff like that. Support at revenuewell.com is where you would get your questions answered. You can call the PTC if you're a Patterson Dental customer. They will be more than happy to help you with anything. And if you want to implement anything, go ahead and reach out. Andre, on this window that you're sharing, can you please share with us how to become members of your group if the folks on here are Eaglesoft and RevenueWell?
Yep, and you see where my what page I was on when I open up my my browser, right?
That's my favorite page.
That's
Go ahead
it.
and get everybody on there.
Yep, everybody should be on the RevenueWell Rockstars. And then my group is the Eaglesoft Field Guide. And as of now, we're up to almost 9,100, 9,200 members almost. So this is the Eaglesoft Field Guide, and pretty much ask any question you could possibly want to know about Eaglesoft. And if you ask a question about RevenueWell, we're going to forward you over to the RevenueWell's Rockstar page. So this is the place to be.
And look, I saw you kick somebody out the other day.
Yeah, you know what? I hate to do it, but this is the thing. This is not a place to solicit business. This is not a place to give false information. This is a place where we sort of, we build up each other, and there's a lot of people who are in there trying to sell something to dentists and dental offices, and just not the place for it. So this is a place to learn and to expand what you know, and I have to every now and then clean up the take out the trash. So
I get it. So I learn every day from Andre. Also want to do a big shout out to the Patterson Technology Group. They're the most amazing people in the whole center. It is amazing. There are a lot of Patterson Technology people inside the Eaglesoft Field Guide. So there's a bunch of us trying to help you be more successful, and Andre and I will be back on the road soon. We still got to do the big event.
Oh yeah, we got to find a time to do that.
That's right, and hopefully all of this will be over soon. So, Andre, do you have anything in closing?
In closing, we will see you soon.
Thank you very much, everybody. Courtney is going to get this out to everybody who registered, and share it with your loved ones at work. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.